So, I hate waiting. I hate it. I think I made that clear last week. I especially hate waiting on parking lots and COVID numbers. Well, okay, maybe that's not true in my entire life, but it's definitely true right now. I kind of feel like the last few weeks I've been preaching a lot about things that I'm not particularly good at. Perfectionism, urgency, and now waiting. It's definitely a do as I say, not as I do kind of thing. Advent is the 4 weeks that precede Christmas, the season where we explore the psychological and the spiritual act of waiting. When I was younger and less mature, I used to make fun of Advent. I just didn't understand the discipline of it. I was like, wait, we're waiting for Jesus to be born again? Didn't we do that last year? We know he's going to be born. We're waiting to see if Christmas will arrive. It will. It's on the December 25th. We know it will. It comes every year that time. Like Bill, it also meant an Advent calendar where I got a piece of candy each day before Christmas. I was waiting for my candy each day, but I still didn't get the spiritual part of waiting. But now I know the Advent of my adulthood, of my growing spirituality, is the art of waiting, the not being sure what is going to happen, and the understanding that miracles can happen in the most amazing places and situations, like mangers and Zoom calls, and even the state of Georgia in elections sometimes. Truly, it's a countercultural act. Waiting is the opposite of our society's need for immediate gratification. It's the perfect follow-up from our reflection on urgency last week. It's the counter side to it, if you will. So Katie told us the story of Elizabeth. It's one of the most sacred passages in the Christian Bible, called the Magnificat. It's the narrative in the Gospel of Luke of Mary speaking with her cousin Elizabeth, who is pregnant with a child who will become John the Baptist. And Mary is pregnant with a child who will become Jesus Christ. While the Magnificat is known for Mary acknowledging that she will be remembered and blessed, and that God's promise that the world will change her through her child, there is also a deep acknowledgement that they both need to wait first. The first chapter of Luke is really the most that the Bible talks about the main characters of the Christmas story. Mary, the mother, and how the story of Elizabeth that Katie talked about weaves into our narrative. I'm going to read a piece of Luke. We draw from so many texts, and sometimes it's good for us to see what knowledge we can also get from the Bible. At that time, Mary got ready and hurried to a town in the hill country of Judea, where she entered Zechariah's home and greeted Elizabeth. When Elizabeth heard Mary's greeting, the baby leaped in her womb, and Elizabeth was filled with the Holy Spirit. In a loud voice, she exclaimed, "Blessed are you among women, and blessed is the child you will bear. But why am I so favored that the mother of my Lord should come to me? As soon as the sound of your greeting reached my ears, the baby in my womb leaped for joy. Blessed is she who has believed that the Lord would fulfill his promises to her." Okay, so Katie already broke this down for you, right? Elizabeth was old, didn't have any children. God said she was going to have a child, but remember, first century Judea, right? No pregnancy tests, no ultrasounds. She was waiting to hear if that was true. And then she felt the quickening, the leaping in the joy we now have a name for. The first time that she had confirmed that she had a live child in her uterus. All of that waiting. Now I'm going to admit that I'm planting some seeds in this service that's going to foreshadow our Christmas Eve service. I'm talking about the Advent story and the Christmas story from the perspective of the women. After all, most of this is a story told by men where the women have very few of the mentions, but actually do most of the work. This is also a follow-up on my sermon on process theology, where I told you that there were a whole bunch of different kinds of theology, like womanist theology, which strives to break down the patriarchal framework of major religions and raise up stories of women and non-binary folks. So this is a womanist take on Advent. Because think about it. Is there anything that epitomizes waiting more than being told that you are carrying a child that will bring peace on earth and goodwill to humankind, and waiting to see if that's actually true? Are you really pregnant? And how could that possibly be? How does that work? Now, okay, some of us kind of know how that works and doubt that part of the story, but still, go with me with the story here. And then you see that your friend, who was also told that she was going to be pregnant, she really is. Maybe you are too. We, as a collective society right now, have never in our lifetimes had waiting be as relevant as it is right now. We are holding our collective breaths, waiting until we can exhale. We are sitting here literally waiting for the world to change. We are waiting for people to wake up to the fact that our democracy is being torn apart, wake up to the realities of racism, misogyny, homophobia, transphobia, waking up to the fact that the rich are getting richer and the poor are not making it. And we're waiting for the pandemic to be over. We're waiting for more vaccinations. We're waiting for this Omicron. None of you guys told me how to pronounce that, by the way. I'm very disappointed. The Omicron variant, holding our breaths, hoping that it won't be too bad, but fearing that it will, because we've been through this before. It's like closing your eyes, knowing you're going to get punched, but just not knowing when and how hard. We are still in that liminal space, that in-between. I still feel very confident that we will look back on this whole time, and I mean a large period of time, and see it as the time when so much changed. I feel like it's going to be a time in our society where we hit rock bottom. I just don't know where rock bottom is yet. The waiting can be difficult, and it can be a spiritual practice. In religion, waiting in liminal space has a central space. It actually is a desired place in many religious contexts. In meditation, we strive to be in that liminal space of being in the world, but not totally in it. Moments of ecstasy may rely on waiting and then embracing that liminal space. Those times of feeling great joy, hearing a wonderful piece of music, for example, having a rousing surge of energy. We know that earth-based traditions revere waiting and embracing those liminal spaces, sunsets, equinoxes, solstices, as we transition between the seasons. That's all liminal. And I also acknowledge that we're in the season of Hanukkah as well, which was so much of a liminal time. There was no more oil for the lamp, and yet the light continued. It was waiting, thinking that they would be plunged into darkness any minute, and yet the light persevered. So I am going to encourage you all to take this opportunity to not just think of this season as how many days do you have to get your Christmas shopping done or decorate, or does anyone do cards anymore? Doing that. Or a chance to have the adult forms of Advent calendars. I'm looking at you, wine Advent calendars. Or just a season that those Christians celebrate. Let's take this time of waiting and see how it applies to our lives, how it can make us go deeper into our spirituality and find the myriad ways it is relevant in our lives. After all, we really don't have an alternative right now, so we may as well find the spiritual practice in it. I wish you a thoughtful, a peaceful, a courageous, and a spiritual Advent. I wish your heart to be in a very holy place.